It has been a full entire year and we're getting a brand new console on top of it. If this game isn't at least decent or high quality, we're gonna see some blood, bro. This is, by the way, not even 2 minutes after I made the joke about Shinx not being in the game. Please stop proving me right, Pokemon. What is good, everyone? Soul here, and welcome back to the story mode. At the time of this recording, it's a week away from Christmas and 2 weeks away from New Year's. To anybody that celebrates, happy holidays to you. Hope you and the family are getting along, having some good eggnog and some better memories. By the time you guys see this, I will likely be doing the same, but I'm gonna get right back to work January 1st because we have a lot of stuff to talk about and compare before we get to the inevitable Pokemon Day Presents in February. But first things first, I thought it would only be appropriate to go full circle and finally respond to the first video that I put out this year. In that video, as it was appropriately titled, I went about all of the different ways that we really needed Pokemon to be careful in 2025. I essentially just talked about a lot of my predictions and hopes when it came to how they handled Pokemon throughout this previous year. And now we are only a couple of weeks away from the end of said year, or I guess in your guys' case, by the time you're seeing this, probably like a couple of days. So the drill is more than well known by now. Why don't you go ahead, grab a seat, a nice cold glass of ginger ale, make sure you get your ramen, bake it with some ketchup on there, and slap it on top of your mashed potatoes while we talk about the fact that Pokemon simply was not careful enough in 2025. So, first things first, we were talking a lot about our anticipation for the Nintendo Switch 2. As a matter of fact, after that very video was released, we actually got our first glimpse of the Switch 2 not even 2 weeks later. But my point still stood. We were patiently waiting for Nintendo to finally put some power behind their games with this brand new console. The Switch 1 did a very good job with its library, but when it comes to power, it was definitely lacking a little bit because it was rushed out due to the PR disaster that was the Wii U. It was genuinely a technical miracle that they got this thing to work the way it did. And the only reason that the Switch 1 was keeping up with the market at the time was the fact that it was the most convenient, considering the fact that it was a hybrid handheld console as well as a home console. But I probably don't need to tell you that, because if you're watching this video, it means that you probably likely own one, which means that you probably knew just as well as I did what the Switch 2 needed to be. A stronger, faster, better looking Switch. Simple as that. And now, I can safely say 6 months in, it's doing exactly what it needed to do. Naturally, of course, before and after seeing the damn thing for the first time, the one thing I was constantly thinking about was what kind of power that could bring to modern Pokemon. I know for anybody that's been following this channel for the last couple of years now are probably sick of me sounding like a broken record by now, but I think that it's always going to be important to constantly reinstate the fact that whatever the Switch 1 did have to offer in terms of power was absolutely no excuse as to how Pokemon was operating for a majority of that generation. Outside of the spin-off games, it was absolutely incredible to witness the games continuously operate worse over time, and it made zero sense. Like, what in the hell do you mean that Pokemon Let's Go, which came out in 2018, somehow looks and operates better than Pokemon Scarlet and Violet did in 2022 on release? I simply could not believe the timeline we were living in. It was absurd. But overall, I think it is generally safe to say, in terms of Nintendo specifically, the Switch 2 is doing exactly what it needs to do. It has the power to run really beautiful and high quality games, and hopefully we see a lot more down the line. In the case of how it's handled Pokemon specifically, we'll get back to in a moment. Because next, we need to talk about specifically how Pokemon handled announcements this year. In my earlier video this year, my primary point during this subject was simply that we should not and could not justify getting a second major Pokemon title like we did during the BDSP and Legends Arceus era. I was simply exhausted, and I just needed Pokemon Legends ZA to be the only primary major Pokemon title that we received at the end of 2025. Thanks Shanks, they did not give us anything else, because wow, would that have been really bad. But taking a quick step back for a moment though, surprisingly enough, we actually had 2 major Pokemon Presents this year, which I was not expecting. During that first major Pokemon Presents, they gave us very little. Right from the get-go, they went filler mode and gave us all of the app stuff, whatever shows were coming out like Concierge and the next season of Pokemon Horizons. Obviously, none of that was spectacular, but we did get our first glimpse at Pokemon Champions. Fun fact, I completely forgot that game even existed until this point when I looked back at the old Pokemon Presents. But I guess that's a good thing because, spoiler alert, that game did not come out this year. It's not a mainline title and in fact meant to be primarily a battle simulator. Literally Pokemon Showdown, but official. I think the thing that primarily scares me about that game is that it does appear to be internally developed by Game Freak, which just... why? Why do we keep splitting that team even more? It is truly astounding why they keep doing this. But whatever, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that much because it's just an official battle simulator that's probably going to be utilized for like official VGC matches and stuff like that going forward starting next year. Other than that though, the only primary thing that they showcased in that Presents was our first real glimpse at Pokemon Legends ZA. And that was essentially all we had to sit on for months. Until we did eventually get that second Pokemon Presents in July, which nobody was expecting. And even then, for the most part, it was pretty much the exact same thing. What with all the mobile game shenanigans that they were showing off, we got a deeper glimpse at Pokemon Champions, and then we got more of a look at Pokemon Legends ZA. I think the craziest part is that some of their most important announcements weren't even in a Pokemon Presents, but a Nintendo Direct 2 months after that. In that September Direct, they showed off 2 very important things in regards to Pokemon. The first major thing was our first major glimpse into Pokopia, a completely new spin-off developed by Koei Tecmo to be something of like a Dragon Quest Builders Animal Crossing type situation for Pokemon. And this was just extremely surprising to hear because a lot of us were fully under the impression that they were just going to continue with the mobile market and we weren't going to get actual spin-offs anymore because we haven't had a real spin-off since Detective Pikachu Returns. And let's be honest with ourselves, that game did not review or sell well, so there was no reason to believe that they would ever bother making any more real spin-offs. Lo and behold, they did. We will talk more about this a little later. The second major announcement in a Nintendo Direct for Pokemon was the DLC for Pokemon Legends ZA, which at that point in time had not even released yet. Given the circumstances that we had with Pokemon Legends Arceus, we weren't even really sure if we would get more content for Pokemon Legends ZA after the fact, let alone before we even got the game. Suffice to say, them announcing a paid DLC a month before the game even released, yeah, let's just say that the feedback was not really stellar. But overall, for the most part, that's a majority of the primary announcements that we got this year. Overall, did they do a good job on announcements? Well, when a majority of people come out a little more confused or annoyed than when they went in, you probably didn't do that good of a job, if we're being honest. There were things that I was generally excited about, just learning more about Pokemon Legends ZA overall. However, a majority of the time was taken up by mobile game nonsense. Learning that we had to spend any more amount of money after that $70 price tag did not leave a pleasant taste in anyone's mouth. And I can't speak for everybody, but me personally, I didn't need to hear about Pokepark Kanto. I didn't. Long story short, they showcased way too much that did not apply to the general audience. And the stuff that did apply did not leave them walking away happy about that stuff. Usually a little bit more confused every time. So overall, announcements were not careful enough. Okay, so what about ZA, the primary Pokemon thing that we have been waiting on for 2 full years? Well, one of the things that I said that was very important when they showcased ZA initially was that it needed to look like it functioned properly. Now here's the thing, when they first initially showed off Legends EA for the first time, it did look like it had generally more polish than Scarlet and Violet or even Legends Arceus did when we first saw those games. Actually, I'm gonna be bold here and say that that first showcase actually far exceeds the previous two. So one would probably think, oh, okay, we've really stepped it up here. This is a much better looking situation than what we had a year or two ago, right? Oh, you sweet, foolish summer child. No, that could not be farther from the case. That first initial showcase brought about two major initial problems for people. Firstly, even for Switch 1, it still looked pretty damn dated for a AAA title. I'm sure a lot of people are very much fully aware that Pokemon does have a distinct art style that they're going for with this current 3D generation. It's kind of going for that like cutesy, Saturday morning cartoonish anime style. And that's totally fine, it's actually really fitting for Pokemon. The problem here though is that we have seen so many other games do this like anime style that have made it work so much better over the years. And even though the character models themselves look fine, the environments and everything around them definitely seem to struggle a little bit. And people felt very off about how this game looked pretty much frame one. And I think the reason for that is because they went with the Scarlet and Violet art style. And that is an art style that people have been just burned by. And so they see anything even remotely close to that, and they're instantly like, oh, this is ugly. This is disgusting. I don't want to see it. Granted, it's been touched up and refined a lot, so I can barely even really compare it that much to Scarlet and Violet, but it's still definitely noticeable, especially off rip, and people were not a big fan of that. The second issue that it brought about was that it confirmed everybody's fear that this game was going to take place in one city. This was a little bit of an unprecedented situation when it came to Pokemon because we had never done something like this before. Most, if not all other Pokemon games, even like a majority of the spin-offs, usually took us to different areas or different zones, different environments for us to explore. We always had different biomes littered with new Pokemon to discover in every game. And after Legends Arceus, people thought that the zone mechanic was pretty much a shoo-in thing that we were going to get going forward. And while we did technically get a zone-based mechanic, it's not what people were looking for. People saw the wild zones in that first showcase and were just like, okay, but they look really small. Like, there's no way we're getting any real nuance out of these wild zones. So you piece that issue with people's problem of the game taking place in one environment, and people were immediately like turned off completely. They were like, yeah, no, this is gonna be a small ass game. There's no way. So in turn, while they did technically do a better job of actually showcasing a game that looked like it was ready to be shown off, it also kind of loses a point because instead of generating hype, it generated a lot more worry and concern overall. And it continuously did that throughout every showcase it was involved in, because every time they would show off a new mechanic or a new area or just new story or anything, people would be like, okay, but where's the thing? Where's the thing that's gonna get me to buy this game? And they really never felt like they got that. Granted, I never had that issue personally. I was pretty much on board the moment I saw that we had real-time combat. So yeah, this didn't really concern me as much personally, but I did see and validate all of the other concerns that I was seeing throughout the promotional period. So long story short, while we did finally get the bare minimum of seeing a game that looked like it actually functioned, what we were working with wasn't really all that appealing to too many people. And that did not have a good look overall. My next major concern was that on release, Pokemon Legends ZA needed to look and feel decent when we had it in our hands. Now, in terms of just plain looks, graphically speaking, I still believe that it is a definite step up from Scarlet and Violet, Sword and Shield, and even Legends Arceus in a lot of aspects. But as we've stated a multitude of times now, we're not ignoring those flat-ass buildings, especially not when other games prior had textures that worked perfectly fine. Why did the city need to have flat buildings? Of all places, why did it need to happen here? That's insane. For the most part, and I say this with a drip of salt here, but the graphics got the job done for the most part. You can ask a lot of people, even people that like thoroughly enjoyed the game, they're not gonna say this is like one of the best looking games out there, which is definitely, again, really concerning. But yeah, no, outside of the models of the people in Pokemon, the graphics aren't really this game's strong suit. However, for the most part, in terms of function, at the very least, this is definitely one of the better functioning Pokemon games we've had in a long time. Or at the very least, because I can't speak for everybody, during my experience, I didn't see so much as a stutter in terms of frame rate. Unfortunately, there were a lot of loading screens, but for the most part, they didn't last that long, so you kind of get used to it. You're not really thinking about it all that much after a little while. Of course, the AI for the Pokemon in general weren't like the best thing, and that definitely showcased itself much more in the DLC, but for my personal playthrough, they worked pretty well. The AI was generally pretty good for the most part. So in my personal playthroughs, I had a very well functioning experience. And I was mostly concerned about this fact because, like I said in that previous video, usually there's always something not functioning properly that definitely could use a day one patch, but Pokemon never gets that for some reason. Stuff that could easily be touched up on and updated, they just never fix. At least in the case of Scarlet and Violet, they obviously weren't working on a day one patch because they were working on an overall patch for the Switch 2, but that's an expensive ass patch. But even then, when it comes to Legend ZA, from the reports that I heard, the Switch 1 edition works pretty damn good too. So that's cool, that's great. It seems that at the very least, they've attained a certain level of polish that I hope continues going forward because, good lord, we cannot have another Scarlet and Violet situation. Now, generally speaking, in terms of things that we received for Pokemon this year, it wasn't a lot. The only other major thing we received besides Legend ZA was the DLC for Legend ZA. The DLC that everybody was concerned with because it was a paid DLC for a game that we didn't even have yet. But once we did finally receive it, it made a lot more sense for me and a lot of other people as to why we didn't have it off rip. This was a DLC that needed you to be as familiar as possible with the base game and ready for more than just the post game. Like, I'm really glad that I went out of my way to do all of that grinding for the shiny charm because that made it so that I had an entire slew of level 100 Pokemon ready for this DLC so that I had variety to choose from when going into these pocket dimensions. Not that it was hard to catch up or anything like that to do the DLC, but I'm glad I had options is all I'm saying. If we're being completely honest though, the DLC released to even less stellar reviews than even the base game. People didn't care that much for the story, they didn't really care for the grindy, repetitive nature of the DLC. They weren't a massive fan of the repeating environments for the pocket dimension. People just got tired of it really fast. Now, me personally, I don't mind a grindy, more repetitive natured game. I love the aspect of just getting stronger through repeated motions. But that simplicity is not enough for a lot of people, and that's totally valid. Especially when the DLC is basically half the price of the base game, which is just an absurd asking point. If you liked Legend ZA enough, this DLC is literally just more Legend ZA. That is simply it. If you were even remotely like nonchalant or whatever about Legend ZA, this DLC was not gonna be for you, and that really sucks. Yeah, cool, we got some more Mega Evolutions and stuff like that, but for the most part, a lot of the Mega Evolutions that people want to get back are pretty much trapped online, and you have to wait a couple of months just to get Mega Blaziken of all things. So when it comes to public opinion, overall, the DLC was definitely a bit of a miss. And then lastly, there were no major ports or spin-off games this year at all. Keep in mind, we have been fully aware of XD Gale of Darkness and Colosseum this entire time. We still don't have those for some reason. Don't know why, but we don't. They're probably saving it for Pokemon Day for some reason, and if they are withholding it that long, there better be some form of home connectivity or something to this game, because why? Why did we withhold this for this long? That makes no sense. That would have been perfectly fine, but I guess we're saving that for this upcoming year while we wait for Generation 10 instead. So sure, fine, whatever. It's the anniversary year, do what you need to do. And next to that, one of our other primary holdovers is likely supposed to be Pokopia when it releases in March. Maybe just like a little over a week after the Pokemon Presents. So that's cool, that's great and dandy. We have a little bit of a holdover with an actual spin-off title that releases right after we get our major news for Pokemon Generation 10. for $70. I hate this generation of video games. It's so bad. The game looks cute. It looks solid, debatably potentially even fun, but not $70 fun. I'm sorry, call me wrong on this if you want. I don't care what the quality is of this game. $70 is way too much. I don't even think Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment should have been $70. That was ridiculous for a game I feel like I got much less out of than the original one anyway, but that's a topic for second channel. Regardless, no, Pokopia should not be $70. That is beyond absurd. This is a spin-off title meant to hop in, get some enjoyment out of every now and again, and hop back off. This is not a mainline title by any means. There is literally no justification for it being that price at all. If I get Pokopia, the only reason for doing so would be to make content for it with you guys, for you guys, and stream it alongside you guys. I personally probably wouldn't get that much enjoyment out of it to justify $70. I know I wouldn't. The only reason I even played Animal Crossing was because it was the perfect stuck in the house game for its time. It just came out at the right time, and I dropped it the moment Final Fantasy VII Remake dropped. And it's like a war going on, right? Because on one hand, I would love to support this game and let them know, yes, we want more actual spin-off games like Pokopia that do creative things with the franchise that we have not seen yet or seen before. We want them to do more stuff like this, get more creative like this. I've been wanting a Pokemon Warriors game for ages now, and one of the only ways I know that we'll get that is if we support actual spin-off games as opposed to the mobile slop they've been putting out. But on the other hand, you kind of also want to send a message that not every single game that y'all put out needs to be AAA title. This is not a AAA title. It's not. I don't care what quality it is. It is a spin-off game. No. And unless they're planning to continuously support that game with hours upon hours of extra content that we could expect down the line, which they won't, then yeah, that price tag just is not it, son. So now I have to fear for if we ever see another real spin-off title ever again, because I can't imagine a lot of people are going to go out of their way to make that purchase, and in turn they're going to be like, okay, so people don't want this, but no, they just can't afford it. So I should probably start wrapping up the video before I pop a blood vessel. Overall, I believe that Pokemon simply was not careful this year at all. And my reason for that is because of the feeling that we're left with. I feel like we're guaranteed to get Generation 10 next year, and because of that, I also feel like that game probably won't get enough time to actually have been in development because it needed to release the 30th anniversary year for Pokemon. And as much as I understand them wanting to do something special for the anniversary, I think that the games having actual quality matters a lot more, and I definitely would not mind another year or two for development with this game, especially if it's going to be a Switch 2 exclusive, and it's probably going to be $70, $80. So not only am I dreading the price tag, I'm also dreading the quality. I'm already dreading the amount of discourse that's going to be happening in regards to everything that Pokemon is going to do this upcoming year, because it was already bad these last couple of months. It's only going to get worse from here on out, because like I said, this was the last chance before the camel's back broke, and now it is just mayhem everywhere. People are spilling genuine blood over Pokemon related stuff. Well, I mean, digitally in the case of Legends EA, but actually physically in terms of Pokemon cards, because people are literally beating each other's asses for what is this year, dude? Despite my enjoyment of Pokemon Legends EA, I am not at all blind to the flaws and the stigmas that it brings, and looking at the timeline for the next couple of major titles, yeah, it's looking kind of hairy in terms of long-term quality, so we'll have to see what happens with all that. And next to that, even more than before, I genuinely fear for the future of spin-off titles when it comes to Pokemon, because despite how high quality the game looks, Pokopia is not a $70 game, and people are just going to skip out on it because it is simply too expensive. And there's just no winning. Either everybody pays that $70 and they move forward with just super expensive spin-off titles, or nobody buys it and they just assume that making spin-off titles of that caliber would be a waste of time, and we simply continue to receive stuff like Pokemon Friends, easily the most aggravating thing that released this year. That game pisses me off to no end. Seriously, why did we waste the title of Pokemon Friends? It should have been Pokemon Eureka. Why did we waste that tag? All right, moving on. Pokemon was not careful in 2025, and it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths when it comes to the possibilities of what we're going to expect in 2026 and beyond. And it's a scary look right now, because gaming is already in a very dire state given the economy and everything that's happening right now, and it's just really scary. But hey, you know what? I doubt that that's just me. So that just about does it for what's likely going to be my last video of 2025. I do have one more video that I would like to do before the end of the year. I'll see if I can get that out, but worst case, that'll probably be like the first upload. You know what? I'm just gonna tell you, you know, it's Christmas, we'll just, you know, my wish list for 2026, you know, but it's not gonna be anything extraordinary or outstanding or anything you haven't heard before, but I'm still gonna do it because it's fun to do those. So expect to see that soon enough. But with that being said, yes sir, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm gonna go ahead and do just that. But before I do, I'm passing the mic over in your direction. I want you guys to tell me everything that you're thinking in the comment section below. Did you agree that Pokemon was simply not careful enough this year? It was just problem after problem after problem. Legends EA just didn't do it for you, or even if you did see, you know, a lot of enjoyment or joy out of that game, you could definitely see flaws that you are very scared will pass on into the next couple of generations of Pokemon games in general? Or are you on the opposing side? You think that Pokemon did great this year, release wise, they did exactly what they needed to do, Legends EA was more than plenty of enough, and nobody has any reason to worry or fear about the future of this franchise? Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I'm always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does appear to be, yes sir, skedaddle o'clock. So I'm gonna go ahead and do exactly so. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time.